Are you ready to make the most of your oil and gas mineral rights? Welcome to the Mineral Rights Podcast. Get the knowledge and resources you need to manage your minerals and royalties. Here is your host, Matt Sands.
Hello and welcome to the Mineral Rights Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Sands, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Williams, and we're here to help you make the most of your minerals and royalties. And in this episode, we're going to answer your listener questions. Justin, it's December of 2024. These questions are stacking up faster than we can answer them, but really good questions this month. And there's a lot of similarities between the questions, but some nuance that we'll talk about. And, I guess the takeaway there is everybody is a little bit different. Each person's case is fact specific. It depends on your exact situation. And like the disclaimer here is this shouldn't be construed as financial or legal advice, but make sure you get help from a qualified professional, whether that's an attorney, an appraiser, or potentially a CPA. So what did you think about the questions this month?
Yeah, I think you said it, Matt. They seem to rhyme, but they don't exactly cover it. And as with anything, I think an attorney's favorite phrase is "it depends." And in many of these questions, I think it kind of falls into that category. A lot of these exact answers depends, but a lot of the situations are similar.
Yeah, and so we can give you some general advice. So thanks again for writing in. And before we dive in, if you have a question you'd like us to answer, send it to feedback@mineralrightspodcast.com. All right, Justin, let's dive into this first one here.
Okay, so our first one here says, "Hi, Matt. I'm a bit new to all this, trying to get ahead of the curve. My parents' estate currently has 244 leases, if I remember correctly. Through the years, my mom has taken care of it all. The renewals, division orders, all without a whole lot of thought with fair market pricing, royalty payments, upfront bonuses." He says, "I'm almost at a loss how to wrap my head around this info, but starting to get the swings of things. Thank you so much for all you do and all you put out there to learn." And this is from Ruben. And so, Matt, this is something we hear all too often. Somebody inherits the estate and then they're just kind of swimming in it. But a great place to start, Matt, is the mineral management basics course that you put out. That really does go through all the way through the process, start to finish, and at least gives you that fundamental foundation to start sifting through all that information.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Another place is the National Association of Royalty Owners, Ruben. So if you're not already a member, highly recommend becoming a member. We have monthly webinars on different topics. We have monthly newsletter, in-person conventions that have expert speakers come and talk about various topics. And then, as you're getting the handle on all of this, it sounds like you're kind of working your way through the process and learning as you go. And that's a great place to be. A lot of times, most of what you'll learn about a particular topic won't really sink in until you're in the middle of dealing with that. So, don't feel like you have to know it all up front. I think that's always the question. I have some clients that I'm working with and they're always, like, oh, I just don't know, everything. I need to sit back and learn more. And I think, well, the part of it is definitely take the time to learn the skills, learn the knowledge that you need, but then also just jump in and start doing it and then get help if you have questions, from experts along the way. So that's, I guess the biggest piece of advice I can give. And then because your family has 244 separate tracts or leases, it probably would make sense to get some sort of a mineral management software to help automate the management of those interests. There are a lot of different options out there, but getting those all in one place so that it gives you notifications when new wells are permitted or when a rig starts drilling nearby, I think is helpful, just because it would take more than a full-time job just to stay on top of all that if you were having to manually sift through the State Oil and Gas Commission website to figure out what's going on in your area. So that's probably my biggest tip as well. So Justin, anything else to add?
And I think you covered it pretty well. Having a tool to help you keep up with that's going to be major. And then you'll have to go through the process of collecting the documents, which will be no small task for that. But having an organization and at least a general idea of what it is you need to keep is a great place to start. With that many properties, Matt, it's going to be when something comes up, you need to have that database to go look at and kind of do the research as you deal with it. So I think you had some great advice.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we cover all of that in the Mineral Management Basics course in terms of what documents you should have, how to organize them, and so forth. So definitely check that out at mineralrightspodcast.com/courses, where you can find that. So, all right, Justin, what's this next question about?
All right, taxes. Everybody loves this topic, especially with royalty. So let's see. Robin here says, Matt, I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I really enjoy it. I have a question about an appraisal notice I received recently. I have a non-participating royalty interest in several properties in Burleson County, Texas. I recently received an appraisal notice from Burleson. Several of the properties' values have gone up quite a bit. They were, however, limited to how much they could raise the taxes by Texas House Bill of 1984 to, I believe, 20% per year for the next 3 years. Could you talk a little bit about this bill? And Matt, we've talked a bit about this, and it seems to be coming up for a lot of mineral owners.
Yeah, and I think that her other question, she has sort of some follow-up questions, which we'll tackle next. But as far as that bill, to be totally honest and upfront and transparent, I don't know a ton about that particular 20% per year for the next 3-year requirement. But I know that House Bill 1984, we found that, and I'll link to it in the show notes, but it mentions, quote, for real property, in addition to the information required, it mentions a subsection, its chief appraiser shall state in a notice required to be delivered the difference expressed as a percent increase or decrease as applicable in the appraised value of the property for the current tax year as compared to the 5th tax year before the current tax year. So that's very confusing, but basically just is a transparency notice, I think. So it just requires that they state how much your property taxes have gone up or down, if that happens as well. You know, the one thing I will say about property taxes is the value may fluctuate up and down, at least in Texas, because it's dependent on prior year royalties that were paid, and then they do an adjustment for the value of commodities. So if the price of oil has gone down this year or price of gas has gone down, they have a mechanism in there to adjust for some of that. I think it's been probably most noticeable when we paid property taxes for in 2022 production because of the huge run up in prices. And we saw a big jump in the property tax bills that went down a little bit in 2023, but not down maybe as much as we were hoping. And then it maybe went down again, or at least stayed somewhat flat. And that was largely due to commodity prices going up so much. They almost doubled really in the period from 2021 to 2022, that time period. So yeah, it's really an interesting dynamic in Texas, but you know, that is something we have to deal with. And then she asks a couple of other follow-up questions, Justin. She says, does this mean the value of my interest has gone up, perhaps significantly in some cases, or is it a routine reappraisal that won't really mean anything to me as someone with MPRI? Could it mean that there have been some new discoveries, or is there nothing new under the sun? I live out of state. It's hard for me really to know what's happening there. So do you want to talk about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. And so in Texas, many times, even if it is NPRI, you're going to see a tax value assessed with that as long as you're receiving royalties. And, you know, I think it's just kind of standard operating business. This happens in Texas. And I know in 2021, there was some hubbub about massive increases, maybe more than that 20%. And so I think, as you mentioned, Matt, this was just kind of a statement to transparency and how they're going to handle this and how much that'll adjust year over year. You'll see it fluctuate some, Robin, but you know, if you have questions, you can always contact the county assessor and see what their reasoning was. But yeah, your property value may go up, it may go down based on that production. You just have to kind of wait and see how that changes.
Yeah, and of course, all of that assumes you're getting paid on a fixed set of wells. To your point, Robin, if there have been new discoveries or new wells that have been drilled, and they started producing in that year and you started receiving royalties, well, that means that you're going to have higher tax bill because you have new wells that you're now getting paid on that you weren't getting paid on the previous tax year. So that is definitely a possibility. You know, you can figure that out by looking back at your royalty statements and see, were there new wells? Did you get new division orders that year? And that's an indication that you have those new wells that have just been drilled that have started producing, and they need your confirmation of your decimal interest in those wells in order to start paying you, at least in Texas. And so then when you get that division order, that's a trigger that you should expect property tax bill to go up the next year because you're all of a sudden getting royalties on new wells, and more than likely they're going to be rather large payments up front because these new wells that are drilled today, typically the horizontal in nature, these shale formations have a lot of upfront flush production early on, and then it rapidly declines and then sort of starts to flatten out over time. So that is possibly what's happening as well. But if you really want to know what's going on in your area and keep tabs on your minerals, definitely become familiar how to navigate the Texas Railroad Commission website. We covered that in more detail and have a video on how to do that in episode 226. And again, we'll link to that in the show notes. So good luck, Robin.
Yep. Good luck on that, Robin. All right. So our next one here is from a Lacey. So Lacey says, I'm a mineral rights owner dealing with 10 years of past production from a property that was held in escrow pending what the operator thought was a cloud on my title. After successful litigation to clear the supposed cloud, the operator has paid my current royalties. However, I'm now going through the work of verifying that the payment matches the reported production and getting the operator to pay statutory interest on the payment. My property is in Oklahoma, and she's hoping our podcast can educate her on the industry jargon and standard practices around royalties. And so, Matt, this is a good position to be in. It's wonderful that you've gotten that title issue cleared up there. And we had talked I just in a recent episode about interest and how that works and pursuing the operator on that.
Yeah, and that was episode 224, what to do about late royalty payments. In that one, we talk about, to Justin's point, how to contact the operator to get paid, but then also how to understand what you should be getting paid in terms of any statutory interest on those payments that were past due. And in your case, if it was not a cloud on title, it was a misunderstanding or misinterpretation by the operator, then I would imagine you would be owed royalties on that. Unfortunately, most states, if there is a title issue, the operator is generally off the hook from having to pay you interest on those royalties that are being held in suspense because of that title issue. So, definitely take a look at the statutes in Oklahoma. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I know they're pretty robust and pretty royalty owner friendly in Oklahoma. So that's good. But then, there are some caveats and some exceptions to when interest is due. So if you have questions about that, definitely contact your attorney and you can ask them about what kind of interest might be due, or in your particular fact-specific situation, which we don't know what was the reason that you weren't getting paid. They'll know that. They'll be able to interpret the statute compared to your specific situation and then give you advice specific to that. But I will say in general, you are owed interest on late payments, but there are exceptions out there. So another couple of episodes to help you out as you go through and audit those royalties. Episode 97, we walk through step-by-step how to audit your oil and gas royalty statements. We mentioned episode 224. And then also for Oklahoma, since that's where your property is located, check out episode 227, where we walk through how to use the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and Oklahoma Tax Commission websites. So that's also a great resource there. So good luck.
And Matt, our next one here from Steve is pretty similar. Says, Matt, my mom is a mineral owner. I'm working on her behalf, trying to resolve a transfer of ownership after my dad passed away in February 2023. After a year of correspondence, we finally got new division orders, which were signed and returned on February 1st of 2024. My mom's still waiting for payments to begin. It sounds like Steve's emailed their customer service numerous times and usually gotten a response and assurance that it's in process. He was even assured that the payment would be received in April, but it was not. And then he hasn't heard from the operator in a couple of times of reaching out to them. And Matt, again, this is something we hear all too often, and polite persistence pays. And then, it applies again as well when we talked in episode 224 about what to do about late royalty payments. This appears to be a situation where that might be applicable.
Yeah, for sure. I think, to the extent that you notified them and again, you got the division orders returned, and I'm not sure what state, didn't mention what state it's in. So returning the division order may or may not have been a requirement to start the clock on the operator to issue payment. So once you submitted the deed or, documentation that shows the transfer of ownership to your mom, that would have been the date from when they would have had to start, when the clock would have started ticking to when they would owe her royalties. And so you just need to go back and see when that was, how long it took them. And if it was longer than the statutory deadline, then you could be owed some interest. And so definitely follow up on that. Like Justin said, polite persistence pays is really the motto. And yeah, good luck with that. And then, you may need to do some extra steps. If you still haven't gotten paid by, this is December when we're recording this, so hopefully you've gotten paid by then. But if it's still sitting out there, you may need to escalate the situation. One of the things that many states require is sending a letter via certified mail in order for that clock to start ticking, and like in terms of the notification timeline and when they need to respond or start paying you. So that might be another step to take. Also, hiring an attorney to get help if you're still not getting a response. Sometimes a letter on the attorney's letterhead will do wonders in kind of escalating the situation and getting you to the front of the line to get paid there. But yeah, like Justin said, episode 224 is really the one to go back and listen to make sure that you've done all the things that you need to be doing. Check the state statute where the minerals are located. And my condolences on the passing of your dad. So yeah, good luck, Steve.
All right, man. Our next one here from James is definitely an attorney situation. But he says, man, I've got lots of problems. So lease A has been pumped by operators to prevent them from losing their overriding royalty interest because the lease would expire. Lease B lied about producing. Then I went to the Railroad Commission website and the operator changed to non-producing and now won't pay me as an unleased co-tenant. Lease C is owned by another person. The same operator pumping it won't let it expire. And then problem D, my ownership's wrong. Problem E, a fraud lease was used to trick my cousins into signing new division orders. He didn't sign the lease, but did sign the division orders in 2010. And it sounds like he sent an email to cancel a division order or attempt to. And James, this is kind of a sticky situation. And boy, will the specifics really matter in this situation. And I think the best advice would be you need to get with an oil and gas attorney and collect those leases. You know, you can really help your case by going to an attorney with the documents that you need versus going to them with just a problem and, you know, putting the title research on them. Though they can do it, it often gets expensive really fast.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that is really key. Everybody's situation is different. So, you know, exactly what you'll need to do will depend on the specific wording in the lease. And, you know, again, if you feel like a lease should be terminated because the wells are not producing in paying quantities, assuming that language is included in your lease, then you can, again, like Justin said, get with an attorney. They can provide some specific advice to how you go about trying to get the operator to terminate the lease and plug the well so you can go and release it again. Of course, it's a double-edged sword, right? So you're assuming the well is still producing a little bit and you're getting paid small amount of royalties. Just know that when you get that well plugged and abandoned, that's going to cease, and there's no guarantee that another operator is going to come in and lease that acreage in the short term, you know, unless you're getting top lease offers and you're in the heart of the Permian Basin where they're drilling, you know, 20 or 30 wells per section, and, you know, that's like imminent in your area, then it may or may not be something that is going to help you in the short term. In the long term, yeah, if you can agree to a much better lease in terms of higher lease royalty rate, less post-production deductions, things like that, it's going to be a benefit. But yeah, just be aware of that. And then sounds like you have some very complicated situations that, you know, may require some professional help in helping you understand the language in the lease and whether or not the operator is complying with that or not. So I think that's probably the moral of the story. The thing on the one thing I will say about where you think the ownership is wrong on lease D is, you know, if that is the case, definitely gather the documentation, send it to the operator in writing, and tell them what you think the correct ownership should be, and then ask them how they came to that decimal interest in the well. You know, ask for the redacted copy of the title opinion that shows your interests, or ask for them to show how they calculated it. And then that could be a helpful exercise as well, just trying to get to the bottom of what the correct answer is. And then your attorney can help with that as well, and they can help you interpret. And I think the other thing too is having that division order title opinion. You know, there might be, for example, a non-participating royalty interest that you weren't aware of that is burdening those minerals, and that's why you're getting paid less. And, you know, getting copies of all of those instruments from the operator, you know, the conveyance of that MPRI, and, you know, is it a fixed MPRI or floating MPRI? All of those really complicated things that are very fact specific that your attorney can help you with, can help you get to the bottom of what you should be getting paid on there. So yeah, good luck. And then, you know, as far as the unleased co-tenant. Justin, you've dealt with that situation. Do you want to speak about what you dealt with and kind of what the steps were there?
Yeah, so unleased co-tenant is kind of a specific phrasing for Texas, and most other states have enforced pooling, but in Texas, it is possible if you don't participate in a lease to be an unleased co-tenant, which typically means your interest is being carried along with the cost. Then once it reaches a point of payout, you would start to receive royalties. It can be an interesting situation to be in, though. We did an episode 111, about what every mineral co-tenant should know. And it's definitely worth listening to that. And then, it's such a unique scenario to Texas. It's certainly worth talking to oil and gas attorney about what is your situation as an unleased co-tenant, what actions you could take or not take. It's a little strange, Matt, in this that there was a lease that was signed, and it sounds like maybe he didn't participate in it, and that's how he ended up being an unleased co-tenant. But if you can easily find out if the other people are receiving payments, that might answer some questions as well to see if that the fact that you are an unleased co-tenant is what's preventing this. And then, Matt, in my experience, it can be, depending on the operator, they can be really great about giving you what the payout point is for a well, and then they can be not so great about giving you what the payout point is for a well. So just kind of a trail to follow.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's the key thing. If they're not paying you now, James, then it's likely that they haven't reached payout on that well that you were unleased. And so that's something to think about. And then, I know in your case, you were able to lease those interests because there were some new wells that were going to get drilled. And so there was some upside for someone to come in and pay to secure that lease and then get a foot in the door in terms of participating in those new wells. Is that an option as well, potentially?
Yep, you're totally correct, Matt. Yeah, we were able to, with one of the wells that were coming in, new wells, we were able to sign a lease with somebody, and that worked out great for us. And then on another well, we remained unleased co-tenants. And in our case, a new operator came in and was able to give us some pretty good information on when the well reached payout. And it all worked out. Previously with the other operator, it was really getting difficult to get information from them, but that can just vary.
Yeah, that's a great tip as well. So yeah, good luck with all that. And then, as far as lease washouts, you mentioned some things in there about trying to get the lease to expire, not letting it expire. Definitely check out episode 228, what you should know about lease washouts, and particularly for overriding royalties, since that's something you mentioned in there, because that can have a big effect on those going forward. So good luck with everything, James.
All right, Matt. So our next one here is from George. George says, I became the conservator of my mother's estate, which holds a lease in Kingfisher County, Oklahoma. It's administered by BCE Mach 3. Other than some correspondence and access to statements, I really don't have any other information, including not knowing where the lease is or how to find and review it. His mother suffers from dementia and didn't really have the chance to plan for the succession very well. The royalty stopped coming this year after years of paying. Sounds like George emailed the customer service and they said it was shut in, but had began producing again this April. And so he's looking for some clarification on what does it mean when they say it's shut in. And it sounded like the operator responded that there was a high pressure issue. So Matt, sounds like they kind of shut this well in for routine maintenance or for some repair. Royalty stopped for a period of time and then maybe catching up, which as we know, Matt, sometimes it could be a few months before you start to see those checks again, just depending on, costs could have been accumulated that need to be paid back, or it simply could just be a time of a payment thing.
Yeah. And he mentioned in there that he asked, what does shut in mean and why was it shut in? And they responded that it was also a plunger wouldn't run. And so what that indicates to me, George, these are probably gas wells that are on plunger lift. Plunger is basically like a little rod in the tubing that goes up and down in the well bore. There's a valve down at the bottom of the well. And basically what it does is it pushes out the column of water in the well and allows the gas to come into the tubing so that it can stay producing. So this is a situation, this is artificial lift for a gas well. And this is where wells later in life, when the pressure in the reservoir has gone down a bit, there's a fair amount of water coming in that if you don't deal with that water, it'll basically kill the well. In other words, that column of water, that pressure building up within the well bore, it will be so high that it will prevent the gas and oil from coming in and flowing to the surface. And so you have to get that water out continually as it comes in. And so that's where that plunger lift comes in. And it's a bit of an art to get those things tuned and so that they're running it the right way. And so that's something maybe they were adjusting, and that's not uncommon for gas wells to load up with water. They might need to come in and swab it. So that would mean they had to bring in a workover rig, manually pull out that water, get the well to flow again, and then put it back on plunger lift and get it going. So it sounds like it was just a routine maintenance type of a thing or it was a maintenance related issue that caused the well to stop producing. The high pressure is oftentimes when these wells are delivering gas, for example, in this case, into a gathering system or into a gas pipeline. If a compressor station goes down or there's maintenance on the gas pipeline to where the line pressure is higher than the well pad, then that will cause the well to stop producing. Basically, it can't flow into the pipeline, and so they have to wait until that issue is resolved, which will drop the pressure again to allow the relative higher pressure on the well pad to push the gas into the pipeline. So that's how all that stuff works. It's just something you have to deal with. You really have no control over it as a royalty owner, but at least they're willing to share some of that information so you at least know, as you're going to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission website, checking the production status and then, seeing what's going on and asking the question when you see that it's shut in. So good job for being proactive and reaching out to them when that happened. As far as, the bigger picture, how to perform a title search, getting copies of your deeds and leases, looking at legal descriptions and how to read them, and then going to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission website to figure out what's going on. I cover all of that in my Mineral Management Basics course, which walks through step-by-step all of those, and it has videos for how to navigate those state oil and gas commission websites to figure out what's going on. So, that's probably the biggest thing. First step is run title, at least search the county records for Kingfisher County. I'm not sure off the top of my head if Kingfisher is something that has the records online directly from the county, but in any case, you could go to okcountyrecords.com. That's a paid service, but it'll allow you to search for your mother's deeds and leases, and then you can pull the legal description off of those to figure out where they're located and what wells you should be getting paid on, because there might be some other things out there. If there's non-producing or if they're sitting out there where it wasn't obvious because of the royalties that she was receiving when you took over, there may be other things out there, I guess, is the moral of the story. So other thing I show in the course is how to go after missing money and missing royalties. So that could be something worth looking into as well. So good luck, George.
Yep. Good luck, George. And then our next one here is from Elizabeth, and pretty similar in at least learning about what she has here. So Elizabeth says that, how do I find how many acres I own and wells shown on my division orders? The wells are located in the Dora Roberts Ranch in Midland and Ector County in Texas. And Matt, like we mentioned to George, it all starts with the title search. So you want to go through and do that title search, find the documents related to your ownership, where it came from. Contact the operator, see how they calculated your net revenue interest and your decimal interest. A lot of times you can ask for a copy of the division order or even a redacted copy of the division order title opinion for your interest, which can answer some questions. And then Texas is really wonderful as far as the Texas Railroad Commission GIS site goes. You're able to find those wells and take a look at them. And we've done some episodes, so episode 226, how to use the Texas Railroad Commission website that also has a YouTube video. And that should help a lot to start to get a grip on it. Once the operator tells you how they calculate your net revenue interest and your decimal interest, you want to confirm that yourself. And we talk about that in episode 3, how to do that. And then episode 10, we have how to perform a title search. But Matt, last but not least, somebody who's really getting into this, it's good to set that foundation. And the Mineral Management Basics course is really the best place to start. Typically you're going to go through that course, your head might be spinning, but at least you have something to go back and access it and say, okay, what steps do I need to take for the problem that I'm facing currently? Because as we mentioned earlier in the episode, it is typically a phase by phase thing. You start at this point, you learn how to do it, and then you build upon that knowledge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's something that's a step-by-step, takes time. I learn something new every day. This is complicated business, and so just be persistent and keep at it, and it'll all start to make sense. But yeah, I think the answer in the back of the book, probably the first thing to do would be, like Justin mentioned, to contact the operator and see what kind of information they're willing to share. That might get you where you need to be in terms of understanding how many net acres you own. So that's something you could ask directly, because they are going to tell you how they calculated your decimal interest. They say, okay, you have X number of acres in this tract here, and this tract is part of this overall unit or part of this allocation well that they drilled, and here's how we went through and calculated your specific decimal interest, and that'll be able to answer that question. Now, if you want to go deeper and be able to verify that net acreage amount, then that's where the title search comes in, like Justin suggested. And, it's always a good idea because they're not going to probably have, they're not going to have any information on any of the other interests that you own outside of those particular wells. And so that they'll share, whatever information they have as, the operator of wells you have an interest in. But then if you have other non-producing minerals or interest in wells that are not operated by that operator, then you'll need to go and do that research and run title and at least search and find copies of your deeds or at least your predecessor's deeds to get a handle on where that stuff is. And so if you don't already have that, that's a great place to start. And that's really where that Mineral Management Basics course comes in. I'll walk you step by step through how to do all of that and what kind of information you should have for each interest. And I have a checklist in there of the important documents and all that good stuff. So good luck, Elizabeth, and congrats on the new wells getting drilled. So
you said it, Matt. Well, that takes care of the listener questions that we have right now, but we got some more to go through. So we're about halfway through the year here.
Yeah, halfway through, we'll keep plugging away and keep getting answers to your questions. If you have a question you'd like us to answer, send it to feedback@mineralrightspodcast.com. And as always, we'll have links to all these resources and episodes that we mentioned in the show notes, which you can find at mineralrightspodcast.com, and look for the December 2024 listener question episode. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. And by the time this goes live, it'll be right before Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thanks again for listening. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks so much for listening to the Mineral Rights Podcast with your host, Matt Sands. Don't forget to subscribe and share at mineralrightspodcast.com. The Mineral Rights Podcast should not be construed as investment, legal, or tax advice. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy.